welcome back to Brother Albin on YouTube. We're continuing with the progress of the book Mania, the reading. This will be the part 2 of the series. We'll try to read out all the books in Skyrim and try to, for some later parts, connect them together for some kind of conclusion about it. So let's see. Let's go to the books, ingredients, and we'll stop at... what was it? Let's see here now. Was it Galarian the Mystic, right? No, that's for Magic from the Sky we read. Just gonna check my notes here. Yep, we did. Alright, so let's continue down to Mixed Unit Tactics. So, Mixed Unit Tactics in the 5 Years War Volume 1 by Kodos Kalanos. Let's get started. The legions could learn from the unconventional tactics used by the Khajiit in the 5 Years War against Valenwood. I was stationed in the Sphinx Moth Legion fort on the border near Dune and witnessed many of the northern skirmishes firsthand. The war started with the so-called Slaughter of Torval. The Khajiit claim that the Bosmer invaded the city without provocation and killed over 1,000 citizens before being driven off by reinforcements from a nearby jungle tribe. The Bosmer claimed that the attack was in retaliation for Khajiit bandits. Wow. Khajiit, is that like how you bend the word? Alright. Who were attacking wood caravans headed for Valenwood. In the spring of the Third Era, 396, the war moved closer to Fort Sphinx Moth. I was posted on lookout and saw parts of the conflict. I later spoke with both Khajiit and Bosmer who fought in the battle, and it will serve as an excellent example of how the Khajiit used a mixture of ground and tree units to win the war. So Bosmer here is the Wood Elves, as you know in this game, as you can play as a race. The Khajiit began to fight in an unusual way by sending tree-cutting teams of Cathay-Racht and the fearsome Senshracht, or Battle Cats, into the outskirts of Valenwood's forest. When word reached the Bosmer that trees were being felled, illegally a crime in the strange Bosmer religion, a unit of archers were dispatched from larger conflicts in the south. The Bosmer were thus goaded into splitting their forces into smaller groups. The Bosmer archers took up positions in the remaining trees, whose branches were now 20 or more feet apart, allowing some light into the forest floor. The Bosmer bent the remaining trees with their magics into small fortifications from which to fire their bows. When the tree cutters arrived the next morning, a half-dozen Khajiit fell to the Bosmer arrows in the first volley. After that, the Khajiit took large wooden shields from the backs of the Senshracht and made a crude shelter. The Khajiit, even the normal Senshracht were able to hide between this shelter and one of the large trees. When it became apparent that the Khajiit would not leave their shelter, some Bosmer chose to descend and engage the Khajiit sword to claw. When the Bosmer were nearly upon the shelter, one of the Khajiit began playing on a native instrument of plucked metal bars. Okay, this was a signal of some kind, and a small group of the man-like Ohms and Ohmsracht emerged from covered holes in the forest floor. Although outnumbered, they were attacking from behind by surprise and won the ground quickly. The Bosmer archers in the trees would have still won the battle were they not having troubles of their own. A group of Dagi and Dagiracht, two of the less common forms of Khajiit, who live in the trees of the Tenmar forest. So these are kind of like different forms or like sub-races of the Khajiit, I suppose, when they call about the Tagiracht and the other ones. Alright. Two of the less common forms of Khajiit who live in the trees of the Tenmar forest anyway, jumped from one tree to another under a magical cover of silence. They took up positions in the higher branches. That could not hold a Bosmer's weight. And when the signal came, they used their claws in either tortures or spells of fire. Accounts from the two survivors I spoke with vary on this point. Okay, so different opinion. to distract the archers while the battle on the ground took place. A few of the archers were able to flee, but most of them were killed. Apparently, the Dagi and Dagiracht have more magical ability than is widely believed if they were able to keep themselves magically silenced for so long. One of the surviving bossmen told me that he saw a few ordinary cats among the Dagi, and even claimed that these ordinary cats are known as Alfik, and that they were spellcasters. But Mosmer are almost as unreliable as the Khajiit when it comes to the truth, and I cannot believe that a house cat can cast a spell. Okay, ordinary cats, a house can cast spells. Alright. At the end of the day, the Khajiit lost perhaps a half dozen fighters out of force of no more than 4 dozen, while the Bosmer lost nearly an entire company of archers. The survivors were unable to report back before a second company of archers arrived, and this strategy was repeated again, with similar results. Finally, a much larger force was sent, and the Bosmer won that battle, with the help of the native animals of Valenwood. That's how they charm animal ability. The third skirmish and the Khajiit response I will discuss in the second volume of this series. So was this like a volume 1 then? Yeah, volume 1, mixed unit tactics. Okay, so see, I have to put a note on that as well then, and see if I can get the volume 2 later on. Let's keep going. Mysterious Akavir. Written by nobody. Akavir means Dragonland. Tamriel means Dawn's Beauty. Atmora means Elderwood. Only the Red Guards know what Yakuda ever meant. Yokuda. Akavir is the kingdom of the beasts. No men or mare live in Akavir, though men once did. These men, however, were eaten long ago by the vampiric serpent folk of Tsaeski. Okay. Had they not been eaten, these men would have eventually migrated to Tamriel. The Nords left Atmora for Tamriel. Before them, the elves had abandoned Aldmeris for Tamriel. The Red Guards destroyed Yokuda so they could make their own journey. All men and mare know Tamriel is the nexus of creation, where the last war will happen, where the gods unmade Lorkhan and left their adamantine tower of secrets. Who knows what the Akaviri think of Tamriel, but ask yourself, why have they tried to invade it 3 times or more? There are 4 major nations of Akavir. It's Kamal, Tseskai, Tangmo and Kapotun. When they are not busy trying to invade Tamriel, they are fighting with each other. Kamal is a snow hell. Demons live there, armies of them. And every summer they thaw out and invade Tangmo. But the brave monkey folks of Tangmo always drive them away. Once Al-Asum Dil Kamal, a king among demons, attempted to conquer Morrowind, but Almalexia and the Under-King destroyed him at the Red Mountain. Tseskai is a snake palace in the strongest power in Akavir, before the tiger dragon came. So the serpent folk ate all the men of Akavir a long time ago, but still kind of look like them. They are tall and beautifully frightening, covered in golden scales, and they are immortal. They enslave the goblins of the surrounding isles, who provide labor and fresh blood. The holdings of Tseskai are widespread. When natives of Tamriel think of the Akaviri, they think of the Serpent Folk, because one ruled the Cyrodiilic Empire for 400 years in the previous era. He was potentate Versidu Shaye, assassinated by the Morag Tong. Tangmo is the 1,000 Monkey Isles. There are many breeds of monkey folk, and they are all kind, brave and simple, and many are also very crazy. They can raise armies when they must, for all of the other Akaviri nations have, at one time or another, try to enslave them. They cannot decide who they hate more, the snakes or the demons, but ask one and he will probably say snakes. Though once bitter enemies, the monkey folk are now allies with the tiger folk of Kapotun. So, the Kapotun is the tiger dragon's empire. The cat folk here are ruled by the divine Toshraka, the tiger dragon. They are now a very great empire, stronger than Saskai, though not at the sea. And after the serpent folk ate all the men, they tried to eat all the dragons. They managed to enslave the red dragons, but the black ones have fled to then Potan. A great war was waged, which left both the cats and the snakes weak, and the dragons all dead. Since that time, the catfolk have tried to become the dragons. Toshraka is the first to succeed. He is the largest dragon in the world, orange and black, and he has a very many new ideas. First, Toshraka says, is that we kill all the vampire snakes. Then the Tiger Dragon Emperor wants to invade Tamriel. So maybe that's something for a future expansion actually. It would be great to see the mysteries of Akavir unfold later on in the Elder Scrolls series. Keep a heads up for that when the Tiger Dragon comes. So, I think I can go for the mystery of, let's see now, one more. The mystery of Talara version 1. Since we have version 2, maybe it's a complete series. We'll start it out anyway, since we have the 1 and 2. Let's go for it. The Mystery of Princess Talara, Part 1, by Mera Liketh. The year was 3rd Era 405. The occasion was the millennial celebration of the founding of the Breton kingdom of Camlorn. Every grand boulevard and narrow alley was strung with gold and purple banners, some plain and some marked with the heraldic symbols of the royal family or the various principalities and dukedoms which were vassals of the king. Musicians played in the plazas, great and small, and on every street corner was a new exotic entertainer. Red Guard snake charmers, Khajiit acrobats, magicians of genuine power, and those whose flamboyant skill was equally impressive if largely illusion. The sight that drew most of the male citizens of Camnorn was the March of Beauty. 1,000 comely young women brightly and provocatively dressed danced their way down the long, wide main street of the city. From the temple of Setiet to the royal palace. The menfolk jostled one another and craned their necks, picking their favorites. It was no secret that they were all prostitutes, and after the march and the flower festival that evening, they would be available for more intimate business. Gaina attracted much of the attention with her tall, curvaceous figure, barely covered by strips of silk, and her curls of flaxen hair, specked with flower petals. In her late 20s, she wasn't the youngest of the prostitutes, but she was certainly one of the most desirable. It was clear by her demeanor that she was used to the lascivious glances, though she was far from jaded at the sight of the city in splendor. Compared to the squalid quarter of Daggerfell, where she made her home, Camden had a height of celebration seemed so unreal. And yet, what was even stranger was how at the same time familiar it all looked, though she had never been there before. The king's daughter, Lady Julia, rode out to the palace gates and immediately cursed her misfortune. She had completely forgotten about the March of Beauty, and the streets were snarled at a standstill. It would take hours to wait for the march to pass, and she had promised her old nurse, Ramke, a visit in her house south of the city. Julia thought for a moment, picturing in her mind the arrangement of streets in the city, and devised a shortcut to avoid the main street and the march. For a few minutes she felt very clever as she wound her way through the tight curving side streets, but presently she came upon temporary structures, tents and theaters set up for the celebration, and had to improvise a new path. In no time at all, she was lost in the city, where she had lived all but 5 years of her life. Peering down an alley, she saw the main avenue crowded with the March of Beauty. Hoping that it was not to be lost again, Lady Julia guided her horse toward the festival. She did not see the snake charmer at the mouth of the alley, and when his pet hissed and spread its hood, her charge reared up in fear. The woman in the parade gasped and surged back at the sight, but Lady Julia quickly calmed the stallion down. She looked abashed at the spectacle she had caused. "My apologies, ladies," she said with a mock military salute. Sure, alright. "My apologies, ladies." "It's all right, madam," said a blonde in silk. "We'll be out of your way in a moment." Julia stared as they marched past her. Looking at that whore had been like looking in a mirror. Oh, sorry, that was a woman, whatever. The same age and height and hair, and eyes and figure, almost exactly. The woman looked back at her, and it seemed as if she was thinking the same thing. And so, Gina was. The old witches, who sometimes came into Daggerfall, had sometimes spoke of doppelgangers, the spirits that assumed the guise of their victims and portend certain death. Yet, the experience had not frightened her. It seemed only one more strangely familiar aspect of the alien city. Before the march had danced its way into the palace gates, she had all but forgotten the encounter. So the prostitutes crushed into the courtyard, as the king himself came to the balcony to greet them. At his side was his chief bodyguard, a battle mage by the look of him, and as for the king himself, he was a handsome man of middle age, rather unremarkable, but Gina was awed at the sight of him. A dream, perhaps. Yes, that was it. She could see him as she had dreamt of him, high above her as he was now bending down to kiss her. Not a one of lust as she had experienced before, but one of small fondness, a dutiful kiss. "Dear ladies, you have filled the streets of the great capital of Camlorn with your beauty," cried the king, forcing a silence in the giggling, murmuring assembly. He smiled proudly. His eyes met Gina's, and he stopped shaken. For an eternity they stayed locked together before his highness recovered and continued his speech. Afterwards, while the women were all en route back to their tents to change into their costumes for the evening, one of the older prostitutes approached Gina. "Did you see how the king looked at you? If you're smart, you'll be the new royal mistress before this celebration ends," she said. "I've seen looks of hunger before, and that wasn't one of them," laughed Gina. "I'd wager he thought I was someone else, like that lady who tried to run us over with her horse. She's probably his kin, and he thought he had dressed up like a courtesan and joined the March of Beauty. Can you imagine the scandal?" When they arrived at the tents, they were greeted by a stocky, well-dressed young man with a bald pate and a commanding presence of authority. He introduced himself as Lord Strail, ambassador to the Emperor himself, and their chief patron. It was Strail who had hired them on the Emperor's behalf as a gift to the king and the kingdom of Camlorn. "The March of Beauty is but a precursor to the Flower Festival tonight," he said, and unlike the king, he did not have to yell to be heard. His voice was loud and precise in its natural modulations. "I expect each of you to perform well and justify the significant expense I've suffered bringing you all the way up here. Now, hurry. You must be dressed and in position in Cavalry Rock before the sun goes down." The ambassador needed have worried. The women were all professionals, experts on getting dressed and undressed, with none of the time-consuming measures less promiscuous females acquired. His manservant Gnorbooth, offered his assistance, but found he had little to do. Their costumes were simplicity itself, soft, narrow sheets with a hole for the heads. Not even a belt was required, so the gowns were open at the sides, exposing the frame of their skin. Kinda hot. So it was long before the sun had set that the prostitutes' stern dancers were at the Cavalry Rock. It was a great wide promontory facing the sea, and for the occasion of the Festival of Flowers, a large circle of unlit torches and covered baskets had been arranged. As early as they were, a crowd of spectators had already arrived. The woman gathered in the center of the circle and waited until it was time. Gina watched the crowd as it grew, and was not surprised when she saw the lady from the march approaching, hand in hand with a very old, very short white-haired woman. The old woman was distracted, pointing out islands out at the sea. The blonde lady seemed nervous, unsure of what to say. Gina was used to dealing with uneasy clients and spoke first. Good to see you again, madam. I am Gina of Daggerfall. This is the worst woman voice ever. Whatever. Let's make another one for Julia then. How can I do this? I can't even do it. I am glad you be. Oh, I can't even read that. Okay, I'm glad you bear me no ill with because of the horse. I mean, horse. Okay. The lady laughed, somewhat relieved. I am Lady Julia Race, the daughter of the king. Oh my god. I always thought that daughters of kings were called princess, smiled Gina. Gina, whatever. In Camlorn, only when they are heirs to the throne. I have a younger brother from my father's new wife whom he favors. Julia replied, and she felt her head swim. It was madness speaking to a common prostitute, talking of family politics so intimately. Relative to that subject, I must ask you something very peculiar. Have you ever heard of Princess Talara? Gira thought a moment. The name sounds somewhat familiar. Why would I have? So I actually changed the voices from Julia to Gina and whatever. Now it's Gina, so just bear with me. I don't know. It was a name I just thought you might recognize, sighed Lady Julia. Have you been to Camlorn before? If I did, it was when I was very young, said Gina, and suddenly she felt it was her turn to be trusting. Something about the Lady Julia's friendly and forthcoming manner touched her. To be honest, I don't remember anything at all of my childhood before I was 9 or 10. Perhaps I was here with my parents. Whoever they were, when I was a little girl, I tell you, I think perhaps I was. I don't recall ever being here before. Oh my god, my voice is cracking. But everything I've seen, the city, you, the king himself, all seem like I've been here before long ago. Lady Julia gasped and took a step back. She gripped the old woman who had been looking out to the sea and murmuring, and by the hand. The elderly creature looked at Julia, surprised, and then turned to Gina. Her ancient, half-blind eyes sparkled with recognition, and she made a sound like a grunt of surprise. Gina also jumped. If the king had seemed like something out of a half-forgotten dream, this woman was someone she knew. As clear and yet indistinct as a guardian spirit. I apologize, stammered Lady Gina. This is my childhood nursemaid, Ramke. It's her! The old woman cried, wild-eyed. She tried to run forward, arms outstretched, but Julia held her back. Gina felt strangely naked and pulled her robe against her body. No, you're wrong, Lady Julia whispered to Ramke, holding the old woman tightly. The Princess Talara is dead. You know that. I shouldn't have brought you here. I'll take you back home. She turned back to Gina, her eyes welling with tears. The entire royal family of Camlorn was assassinated every 20 years ago. My father was Duke of Oloin, the king's brother, and so he inherited the crown. I'm sorry to have bothered you. Good night. Gina gazed after Lady Julia and the old nurse as they disappeared into the crowd, but she had little time to consider all she had heard. The sun was setting, and it was time for the flower festival. 12 young men emerged from the darkness, wearing only lion cloths and masks, and lit the torches. The moment the fire blazed, Gina and all the rest of the dancers rushed to the baskets, pulling out blossoms and vines by the handful. At first, the women danced with one another, sprinkling petals to the wind. The crowd then joined in as the music swelled. It was a mad, beautiful chaos. Gina leapt and swooned like a wild forest nymph. Then, without warning, she felt rough hands grip her from behind and push her. She was falling before she understood it. The moment realization hit, she was closer to the bottom of the 100-foot tall cliff than she was to the top. She flayed out her arms and grasped at the white cliff wall. Her fingers raked against the stone wall and her flesh tore, but she found a grip and held it. For a moment she stayed there, breathing hard. Then she began to scream. The music and the festival were too loud up above. No one could hear her. She could scarcely hear herself. Below her the surf crashed. Every bone in her body would snap if she fell. She closed her eyes and a vision came. A man was standing below her, a king of great wisdom, great compassion, looking up smiling. A little girl, golden-haired, mischievous, her best friend and cousin, clung to the rock beside her. The secret to falling is making your body go limp. And with luck, you won't get hurt, the girl said. She nodded, remembering who she was. 8 years of darkness lifted. She released her grip and let herself fall like a leaf into the water below. That was the end of the volume 1. Oh, sorry. Let's go to the volume 2. This is kind of Mystery of Talara. This is very interesting. Okay, volume 2. The Mysteries of Princess Talara Part 2 by Mira Liketh. She felt nothing. Darkness enveloping her body and mind. Pain surged through her leg, and with that sensation, a great feeling of cold washed over her. She opened her eyes and saw that she was drowning. Her left leg would not move at all, but using her right one and her arms, she pulled herself up towards the moons above. It was a long way though, the swirling currents that wrenched back at her. At last she broke the surface and sucked in the cold night air. She was still close to the rocky shoreline of the capital city of the kingdom of Camnor, but the water had carried her quite a ways from the point where she fell at Cavesty Rock. Not fell, she thought, correcting herself. She had been pushed. Further down current, she allowed herself to drift. There the steep cliff walls sloped lower until they were close to the water's edge. The silhouette of a large house in the shore loomed ahead, and as she neared it, she could see smoke rising from the chimney and the flicker of firelight within. The pain in her leg was great, but greater still was the chill of the water. The thought of a warm hearth fire was all the motivation she needed to begin swimming again. At the shore's edge, she tried to stand but found she couldn't. Her tears mixed with the sea water as she began to crawl across the sand and rock. The simple white sheet, which had been her costume at the flower festival, was tattered and felt like a weight of lead across her back. Beyond the point of exhaustion, she fell toward and began to sob. "Please," she cried, "if you can hear me, please help me." A moment later, the door to the house opened and a woman stepped out. It was Ramke, the old lady she had met at the flower festival, the one who had started and cried. "It's her!" Even before she herself knew who she was. By contrast, when the old woman came to her this time, there was no glimmer of recognition in her eyes. "By Sethiet, are you hurt?" Ramke whispered and helped her up, acting as her crutch. "I've seen that gown before. Were you one of the dancers of the flower festival at night?" "I was there with Lady Gilly Reyes, the daughter of the king." "I know! She introduced us," she groaned. "I call myself Gina of Daggerfall." "Of course I knew you looked familiar somehow," the old woman chuckled, and led her hop by hop across the beach and into the front door. "My memory isn't as good as it used to be. Let's get you warm and have a look at the leg." Ramke took Gina's soaking rags and covered her with a blanket as she sat at the fire. As the numbness of the chill water began to leave her, it cruelly abandoned her to the intense agony of her leg. Until then, she had not dared to look at it, But when she did, she felt vomit rise up at the side of the deep gash, fish-white dead flesh, plump and swollen. Thick arterial blood bubbled up, splashing on the floors in streams. "Oh dear," said the old woman, returning to the fire. "That must rather sting. You are lucky that I still remember a little of the old healing spells." Ramke seated herself on the floor and pressed her hands on either side of the wound. Gina felt a flare of pain, and then a cool, soft pinching and prickle. When she looked down, Ramke was slowly sliding her wrinkled hands towards one another. At their approach, the lesion began to mend before her eyes, flesh binding and bruises fading. "Sweet Cynareth," Gina gasped, "you saved my life!" "Not only that, you won't have an ugly scar on your pretty leg," Ramke chuckled. "I had to use that spell so many times when Lady Julia was little. You know, I was her nursemaid." "I know," Gina smiled, "but that was a long time ago, and you still remember the spell." "Oh, when you're learning anything, even the School of Restoration, there's always a lot of study and mistakes. But once you're as old as I am, there's no longer any need to remember things. You just know. After all, I've probably cast 1,000 times before. Little Lady Julia and the little Princess Talara was always getting cut and bruised. Small wonder the way they was always climbing all over the palace." Gina sighed. "You must have loved Lady Julia very much." "I still do," Ramke beamed. "But now she's all grown and things are different. You know, I didn't notice it before because you were all wet from the sea, but you look very much like my lady. Did I mention that before when we met at the festival?" "You did," said Gina. "Or rather, I think you thought I looked like Princess Talara." "Oh, it would be so wonderful if you were the princess returned," the old woman gasped. "You know, when the former royal family was killed, and everyone said the princess was killed, though we never found the body, I think the real victim was Lady Julia. Her little heart just broke, and for a while it looked like her mind did too." "What do you mean?" asked Gina. "What happened?" "I don't know if I should tell a stranger this, but it's fairly well known in Camlorn, and I really feel like I know you." Ramke struggled with a conscience and then released. "Julia saw the assassination, you see. I found her afterwards, hiding in the terribly blood-stained throne room, and she was like a little broken doll. She wouldn't speak, she wouldn't eat. I tried all of my healing spells, but it was quite beyond my power, so much more than a scraped knee. Her father who was then Duke of Boulogne, sent her to a sanitarium in the country to get well." "Oh, that poor little girl," cried Gina. "Yes, it took her years to be herself again," said Ramke, nodding. "And in truth, she never really returned altogether. You wonder why her father, when he was made king, didn't make her his heir. He thought that she was still not exactly right, and in a way, as much as I would deny it, he's correct to think so. She remembered nothing at all." "Do you think," Gina considered her words carefully, "that she would be better if she knew that her cousin, the Princess Talara, was alive and well?" Ramke considered it. "I think so, but maybe not. Sometimes it's best not to hope." Gina stood up, finding her leg to be as strong as it looked to be. Her gown had dried and Ramke gave her a cloak, insisting she protect herself against the cold night air. At the door, Gina kissed the old man's cheek and thanked her, not only for the healing spell and for the cloak, but for everything else of kindness she had ever done. The road close to the house went north and south, and to the left was the way back to Camnorn, where secrets lay to which she alone held the key. To the south was Daggerfall, her home for more than 20 years. She could return there, back to her profession on the streets, very easily. For a few seconds, she considered her options and then made her choice. She had not been walking for very long when a black carriage, drawn by 3 horses bearing the imperial seal, together with 8 mounted horses, passed her. Before it rounded the wooden path ahead, it stopped suddenly. She recognized one of the soldiers as Gnordbooth, Lord Strail's manservant. The door opened and Lord Strail himself, the Emperor's ambassador, the man who had hired her and all the other women to entertain at court, stepped out. "You!" he frowned. "You were one of the prostitutes, aren't you? You are the one who disappeared during the flower festival. Gunna, am I right?" "All that is true," she smiled sorely, "except my name I've discovered is not Gunna." "I don't care what it is," said Lord Strail. "What are you doing on the South Road? I paid for you to stay and make the kingdom merry." "If I went back to Camlor, there are a great many who would not be merry at all." "Explain yourself," said Lord Strail. So she did, and he listened. So that's the end of the volume 2. I hope there's a volume 3, etc. of this story, because it's kinda interesting. And yeah, I like it. Alright, let's go to the next one. We have to continue this later on, and when we find the next versions, we maybe make like a roundabout of the version 1, version 2 again, and then go towards version 3. But it was a good read. Let's go. Of Fjori and Holgeir. Just got a sip of water. Fjori and Holgeir. Let's go. So, in her 29th summer of life, Fjori the Huntress met the warlord Holgeir on the field of battle. None remember what they fought over, for the love to come was so great, it overshadowed all rivalries or disputes. Wow, it starts very strong. Ooh, it's a love story, I think. They fought to a standstill, as their followers looked on till her sword broke his axe and his shield dulled her blade, and all could see that they were equals. As the eagle finds its mates, so too did Fjori find hers in Holgeir, and a time of peace came to the clans of the forest. But as the summer's warmth gives way to winter's chill, so too would this peace pass. But the snake came and bit Holgeir, its venom seeping deep into the wound. A whale greeted Fjori's view, and she came over the snow-covered mountains to the coast. She obtained an elixir from the Akavir, Akavir again, and returned to the forest in haste. Though Holgeir could smell the winds of Sovngarde, that's the death place for the Nordics religion. So for the Nords, Sovngarde is like afterlife. She gave him the elixir and he was cured in an instant. But the snakes bit Fjori as she poured the last drop into Holgeir's mouth. And fatigued from her journey, she joined the ancestors immediately. Holgeir's grief was such that he built a tomb, and upon completion took his own life that he might rejoin her. So this is more like a poem than I think, like an, or maybe it's I don't think it's a song, but more like a poem. Maybe you can find this in the game as well. Let's see. Fjori and Holgeir. Okay, let's have a look out for that as well. So Olaf and the Dragon by Adonato Leotelli. Adonato Leotelli. Alright. Let's go. One of the more colorful legends in Nord folklore is the tale of Olaf, One-Eye, and Numinex. Long ago in the First Age, a fearsome dragon named Numinex ravaged the whole of Skyrim. The dreadful drake wiped out entire villages, burned cities and killed countless Nords. It seemed that no power in Tamriel could stop the monster. This was a troubled time in Skyrim's history, for a bitter war of succession raged between the holds. The Jarls might have been able to conquer the beast if they had worked together, but trust was in desperately short supply. A skillful warrior named Olaf came forward and promised to defeat the beast. In some accounts, he is the Jarl of Whiterun. Okay, interesting. In other versions of the legend, Olaf promises the people of Whiterun that he will capture the monster if they will name him Jarl. Alright? At any rate, Olaf ventures forth with a handful of his most trusted warriors and seeks the beast out, eventually finding Numinex in his lair atop Mount Athor. Needless to say, it's an epic battle. First, Olaf comes at the dragon with his axe and his shield. Some variants of the legends say that Olaf and the beast battled with blade and claw for days, but were too evenly matched for either to gain an advantage. Yeah, most accountants hold that Olaf, perhaps frustrated that his weapons are completely ineffectual against the dragon, finally cast them aside. I mean, a dragon is a force to be reckoned with in Skyrim. It's no easy joke. I can't even like beat the dragon single-handedly, kinda. So, and I'm kind of garbage. So okay, oh whatever. I'm not Olaf. Whatever. Let's go. Giving voice to the rage that has been building within him, Olaf released a terrible shout. Here again, the stories diverge. Many accounts hold that Olaf did not realize he possessed the power of dragon speech, while others suggest that he had long possessed this gift, but wished to test himself against the dragon in more martial combat first. Virtually, all variations of the legend, however, agree on what happened next. Using the awesome powers of the dragon language, Numinex and Olaf engage in an epic shouting duel atop Mount Thor. So forceful are their words, they are said to shatter the stone and split the sky. Finally, Numinex collapses. From a combination of injury and sheer exhaustion, somehow, and this detail is conspicuously absent in virtually every account, Olaf manages to convey the dragon all the way back to the capital city of Whiterun. The people of Whiterun are suitably impressed with Olaf's hostage. They build a huge stone holding cell at the rear of the palace, which they renamed Dragon's Reach. This enormous cell serves as Numenex's prison until his death. Olaf himself eventually becomes the High King of Skyrim, putting an end to the War of Succession. Presumably, his great deed made him the only leader upon whom all the power could agree, and so the lad once again was at peace. So Dragon's Reach in Whiterun, I have to look it up. Maybe I can find Dragon's Reach, because currently I am in a cellar in Whiterun, at the Jarl's house, sitting down. So, as a visitor to Skyrim, I find this tale both fascinating and highly entertaining. It is one of the most celebrated legends of the Nords, and one could easily understand why. It's a story of surpassing heroism, in which a resourceful and worthy Nord does battle with a truly terrifying adversary and emerges victorious by yelling him into submission. Yeah, the dragon shout. The only way in which this could have been even more of a Nordic tale would be if Olaf beat Numinex in a drinking contest. The legend is not without its doubters, however. The bard Svaknir, who lived during Olaf's reign, wrote and performed an alliterative verse that challenged Olaf's version of events. Enraged, the king threw the rebellious bard in prison and destroyed all written copies of the verse. How I would love to lay hands on a copy of that verse. I admit, I am immensely curious to know what assertions Svaknir made about how Olaf really defeated Numinex. There are a few ancient bard texts that provide one possible answer. These tomes suggest that Numinex was particularly foul-tempered, because he was extremely old. In these accounts, the dragon spends his final years terrorizing the countryside before flying off to the top of Mount Thor to die in peace. When Olaf finds Numinex, the dragon is too weak to defend himself. Olaf and his men capture the beast without effort, but decide to take advantage of the situation by fabricating a heroic tale. It is worth noting that all of Olaf's warriors who were said to witness the shout duel went on to become wealthy leaders during Olaf's reign as High Kings. However, it is equally likely that Svaknir had some grudge against Olaf, and this scandalous verse was an attempt to damage the High King's reputation. Alas, we will never know. I leave you now, good reader, with this gentle reminder. A good historian must remain impartial and consider all points of view. Time has a way of distorting our record of events, so the closer you can get to the original sources, the better. Great reading, awesome! So Olaf and the Dragon is also read now. So I will stop the video right here, 45 minutes have passed nearly, so thank you so much for watching this reading session of Book Mania Part 2. Please like and subscribe, follow my YouTube channel, and click the notification bell to get all of the uploads that I do into your mailbox. You don't miss out on any of my content. And also, please put a comment down below if you want to like discuss some of the books or tailor them together with me, or just ask anything or have a chat about anything. Would be very nice. I read everything, I answer to everything. So see you guys next time. Bye bye.